Welcome back. Let's now start with the file house prices V2 because we've manipulated that a little bit. That might be easier to work with the data. The other thing that we did, um, or at least to go with the starting point, let's start with the qualitative or categorical data in fireplace, region, and color. I'm going to focus in on region. It might be interesting to know how many different houses come from each region. So if one region is more or less populated than the other, uh, I'll know that there are more houses available in that region. There's a number of ways to do this. Let's start with creating what we call a pivot table. You can find that under under Insert, Pivot Table. And that brings up a dialog box. Now, while you're kind of getting caught up, one of the things that I'd like to point out is the pivot table skill is a skill that employers are looking for. I've seen it as job requirements, and we encourage all of our students to become at least somewhat familiar with pivot tables. The good news is pivot tables have gotten a lot easier to use. So what we're going to do with the pivot table is create a visual display called the summary table for the region. Now here, the first thing you need to know is select a table or range. And it noticed that I had all this contiguous data here, and then it put it in the range for us in this dialog box here. We didn't have to type that in. And that points out another good little tip. Try not to have blank columns between your data. If you do, well, I wouldn't even recommend it, but if you do, make sure it has a title. Sometimes Excel won't recognize the break or recognizes the break and it might omit something that you want. Now, for our purposes, I'm going to put the summary table that we create into the existing worksheet in row L3. It doesn't really matter where we put it other than I kind of want to put it right over here for easier viewing. So at this point, we've set up the data range that we're going to draw from, and we set up the position cell L3 that the summary table is going to be created. And now we're ready to say OK. And I'll just pause for a moment, particularly if you're switching back between the video and your own spreadsheet. All right. And you can always pause the video. So I say OK. We're not done yet. We have a lot of those data variables, so I'm going to slide down the list to the right. Region is my variable of interest, and the first thing it does is automatically put it into rows. The second thing I'm going to do is drag that region into values. And so I'm going to close the pivot table window for a moment, or in a moment, to give you the opportunity to see what's going on. But where's the table? Well, don't forget, we have not even a large data set, and we can't see everything. So here, you see the summary table. 22 houses in the central region, 7 in the north, and 10 in the south. So our first takeaway is most of the houses, more than half, come from the central region. Now we might want to add something like percentages to that. So here, we could simply use a very simple formula that would take the value 22 in cell M4 and divide it by the value in M7. Sorry about that. Hit enter, and we get a decimal number. Repeat that for the north, 7 divided by 39. Repeat that again for the south. And a good check at this point is to use our auto sum function, very handy. And there are a few different options under here. But often we just want to do a quick sum. And what should that number be when we hit enter? Should add up to 1. Now, we might want to display these since we're really more interested in percentages. So I highlight those 4 values we just created, very simplistic Excel commands. Right click, format cells, percentage, and we'll just change it to 1 decimal. I'm not going to belabor on this other than I would assume most people know how to change the format of a cell. Lots of options. You can certainly play with different ones until you get it to look the way you want. Another interesting thing is that I can take this column title in M and use a function called Format Painter. This is extremely handy. The Format Painter will allow me to take this formatted cell and paint it onto the title of percent in N3. So just as we formatted the numbers to become percent, the decimals to become percentages, so too did we highlight the title. And I will go through and add more of these features as we move along, but I'm trying to give you very simplistic flavors at the moment. Now we've got a nice table, summary table with percentage information. I'm going to go back and highlight just the table with the counts, and we might want to make a visual display for this. So here, just like we did to get to the pivot tables, click on Insert, and there's all kinds of charts here. I'm just going to pick a simple bar chart. And now we have a nice chart to work with. I'm not going to get into a lot of the fine points of the displays, but you can highlight things and say, change that to like total homes, all kinds of different things. On the plus here, I could add a data label. This one is handy. A data label, and notice what it does as soon as I put the check under data labels, it puts the counts of each of the regions at the top of the bars on the bar chart. And of course, bar charts go hand in hand with categorical or qualitative data. And that is a pretty quick and dirty way to get a nice visual display that you could copy and put into a Word document. So usually what you would do is format it just the way you want, copy it, and now you have a nice chart. And in fact, it's worth noting that you can make this bigger or smaller as the case may be. And I won't again belabor too much of the fine points of document creation other than to try and get you to have as many tools as you can for some visual different displays so that you can create better looking presentations and reports. And you could easily copy this into a PowerPoint slide as well. In fact, I would encourage you to try it. Let's go back to our data for a moment. And I can just click on that and hit the delete button to get rid of that chart. And now I want to spend a moment or two showing a little bit different way to do the same thing. This time, right below the data set, I'm going to put the regions into a little bit more natural north, central, south format. And again, this is early on, so I'm trying to give you lots of different flavors on how you can do these things. Instead of the pivot table, A little bit more cumbersome but simplistic way to do it is to use a formula where formulas insert function, and here the function is called COUNTIF. And if you go to formula insert function, and whenever I insert a function or a formula, I'm going to click on formula insert functions. And there are several different ways to get to these. I'm going to try and use the standard way. I searched for the function that I wanted. It listed it at top. And I need a couple of things. I need a range and I need a criteria. As soon as I click OK, and I won't do that right this second, you'll note that it creates a dialog box, and we're ready to hit OK now because I just want to make sure everybody is with me, where I need the range. I could highlight the range, but to start, I'll type in I1 dot I40. And that's the range from which I am interested in drawing all homes that are from the north region. And once I've got those typed in, I can say OK. And there's the 7. Now, if I go back and edit that formula, which I can do at the top here, I may want to highlight I1 to I40 and hit F4, or on some laptops, function F4. And what that does is it puts dollar signs in front of the row and column references of the range, which will allow us to do the following. I haven't changed cell I42 substantially, but now I can copy that. I assume people know how to do copying. You can right-click copy and then click in the cell that you're interested to and right-click paste. And perhaps I'll use that methodology a little bit more because it's a little bit more visual. And now I am in cell I43, and I can go back up here and change the north to central. And then repeat that process. And it doesn't matter which one of these I copy. I'm going to copy from I42 and paste into I44. And one of the sneaky reasons of doing that is to just be able to more easily change north to south. And now I have the number of homes in the south region. And that isn't the easiest way to do it, but if you aren't good at pivot tables, that COUNTIF function is quite helpful. And even when I get to that, I can highlight that summary table, insert a bar chart, and there we go. Now here, the advantage of this chart is that I had a little bit more control over the order, north, central, and south, on how I wanted it to be presented. So a couple of things here. Let me move this out of the way. Two different ways, and half of my interest of creating the second way to create a summary table is that I wanted to introduce the COUNTIF function. So anytime it's appropriate, I'm going to try and introduce a new function that I think will be helpful. I made the modification of putting the dollar signs in front of the row and column references, so that when I copy those down, it's still always referenced I1 to I40. That's relative or versus absolute cell addressing. When the dollar signs are present and you copy down, It doesn't change them. If the dollar signs weren't present, it would have copied the I1 to I2 and the I40 to I41, and then I2 to I42 in cell I44. That's a lot of I's. So here, a couple different ways to create a summary table. And in fact, perhaps for fun, I could also insert a pie chart, even though I'm not a big fan of pie charts. They do make nice visual displays. Uh, and so I'll leave you with that better visual display. And again, pie charts and bar charts, good for categorical data. They're fairly easy to create. I can move this one over here. And if you wanted, for practice, you could try creating a summary table both ways, or whichever way you prefer, for the color of the different houses. And again, there's only 4 colors, mainly just to limit the bars and the choices for you. So that was quite a bit for one video, so I'm going to stop there and we'll pick this up again in the next